Dawnlight, welcome to Forfelliness Belysning illumination from the ancestors, guiding your path today.
Every day, someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiancé, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great-grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them.
God morgen, and happy Freya's Day to you. Today we celebrate the energy of Freya. We incorporate all the magic that she brought to Midgard and the understanding to those Asgardians as well. As she traveled throughout the realms, being recognized for this energy management as she became the goddess of love and war. Quite a spectrum on the emotional scale. As always, today I want to start by saying thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed to us. I can only begin to express my deepest appreciations. For those of you who haven't, today's the day, Freya's Day. Go ahead and hit those buttons, do the super secret handshakes with all the different whether you're hearing us on the audio podcast or whether you're listening or viewing us here on the video broadcast, whatever. Like, follow, subscribe, hit those buttons, and help us to promote our message even further. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my friends and family at New Reality TV. NewRealityTV.com is a streaming channel dedicated to those that have come before us and given us a different perspective. And so it's just dedicated to these many different perspectives of our spiritual journey. So be sure to check them out, newrealitytv.com. Today's show, sponsored by Blackout Coffee, from the first light. From the first light of dawn to the long watch at midnight. Warriors of every age have sought the fire of the bean. Blackout Coffee forges that strength in every cup. Bold, unyielding, crafted for those who refuse to fade. Awaken your saga. Awaken your cup by visiting our website at akumedia.akulfhednar.com/sponsors. So, today's show, the Trail of Njörðr. Understanding what really Njörðr brings to our understanding. Well, first let's talk about who he was. Well, in of course, Norse legend and lore, Njörðr was the god of the sea. He's also, depending on which legends you hear and subscribe to, he's the father of the twins, Freyr and Freya, which is appropriate today, being that it is Freya's Day. So, Njörðr presents the power of the sea. Well, what does the sea represent really in our world, other than the separation between peoples, right? Well, no, it represents a lot more. Njörðr and the sea represents a pattern, a predictable seasonal flow. When our ocean, as an example, when we look at the ocean and it's not stormy or it's nothing crazy, right? It's this steady swells, right? Nice and steady. And those steadies, swells kind of deliver upon the shore this rhythmic relay of water there on the beaches. This is very indicative of how our existence should be. We should live in very much the same way that the sea lives, right? We should be even and recognizing the experiences that we have are there for a reason. There's something to learn from all of it. The good, the perceived good, and the perceived bad. They're just experiences that are providing for us this sensory input that alters our emotional state, that provides us with memories. But it's an even flow. Now, when I began channeling and began understanding the control and management of my aura, one of the analogies, one of the visions that my ancestors would provide for me is our emotional state being very, very like the waves of the ocean. There would be days when the winds were whipping and the waves became choppy and very hard to navigate, very hard to get anywhere. But we tried, we sought after, and we constantly were in a quest for those calmer seas. The seas that allowed us then to journey far. Same thing with our emotional state. While yes, there will be times where things are a little crazy and maybe there's some drama or trauma in our lives, we seek to get back to that that generic wave of slow frequency, of low, just calm and peace. Now, when we think about our aura and the management of the aura, we need to address this calmness, this still, because it's super critical. By reducing the frequency on the border of our aura, we allow ourselves, we kind of encourage a crossover between our auras and other people, right? So this is really kind of the foundation, if you will, for harmony with others. Now again, we're always going to have those periods in our lives where the waves are very, very choppy. Our frequency at our border is very high. And what happens when our frequency is very high is that we're repelling others. This is why sometimes when you may be in a heated discussion with your partner or your significant other, you don't want to be around them. You don't want to be around them. Why? Because your frequency or their frequencies are just too incompatible at the time. And so you're kind of repelling each other, right? And it's only when you both can kind of calm down, allow the waves to return to this normal, can we technically begin to communicate again and begin to interchange emotional states. But it's the frequency of our border that allows that. Now, we've talked about the aura before, and I'm sure we'll talk about some more because it's a critical piece in our spiritual journey as well. When we think about communicating through the aura, whether we're communicating with spiritual entities that are not bonded to physical forms, or they are, the methodology at which we're going to communicate is through this aura. And there are two pieces, and we've talked about them, two pieces of the aura that makes communication possible. The first one we've already discussed, and that's this frequency on the border. It's super critical that we understand that frequency represents our emotional state in literally an experience by experience moment. So we could be very crabby one moment, we could be very sad the next. We could be ecstatic the next. So that emotional state, that roller coaster that we ride sometimes of emotional states, is literally part of our existence. It's a requirement because it teaches us how to manage our aura, right? So in much the same way as we just mentioned, we have a moment where we're super angry and we want to fight everyone. And then when we take a moment and we just calm ourselves, calm the mind, that kind of goes away. Our emotional state can change, right? So we're changing ourselves, and then we're changing our aura, which then in turns kind of encourages or supports that change that we made. The second part of the aura is the inside, that which is inside with us, okay? And that is kind of, think of it as being in a reverse bubble filled with water, which is why Njörðr is so appropriate today. Filled with water. And some days the water is super clear. We can see for miles. For those of you who have had the opportunity to go snorkeling maybe, or even scuba diving, you know that there are some times you go diving and you can see underneath the surface of the water, you can see forever. And just ever and ever. It's so far. It's beautiful, right? And there are other times that you go diving that you can't see your hand in front of your face, okay? And or not as far, okay? So night dives, I used to love going on night dives because it was the only other existence when you're night diving is what your light is on, right? So, or your diving partner's light is on. Anything else is just pitch, depending on where you dive, of course. So, I mean, this is really the world that we can rest assured in, knowing that when our auras, and by the way, that part of our aura, the inside of our aura, is really controlled by our mental state. So if our mental processing is just chewing things up, that becomes very murky. If we're relaxed, we're calm, we're, our thought process is kind of focused on breathing or focused on maybe one thing, we're bringing all that concentration and the energy down. When we can do that, we're going to clear that aura, right? So we're going to clear that away. So the real key in our lives, in our existence, is to manage our aura. It's to think about going through our lives and managing those two things: our mental processing and our emotional state. Those two things form essentially the communication channel between the self and the spiritual realm. Okay, so if this is clear and our aura border is nice and even and slow, then we're able to communicate more freely, more cleanly. What's really exciting for me is when you think about the spiritual realm, the ancestors, and we spoke yesterday about the ancestors. When we send them energy, we're focused on them, we send them energy, and they send energy in return. How that energy we can use to heal ourselves, to grow, to evolve, and we can use that energy for all kinds of things in the self. But that energy, as it comes back through the aura from the spiritual realm, it's coming back through. It is affected by this clarity within the aura around us. So if our aura is very, very cloudy, it's just murky as anything, that energy coming back is like a light bulb with a frosted bulb on it, in lieu of a light bulb that doesn't have the frosting on it, right? And so we get more of a direct light when we don't have the frosting. And when we do have the frosting, it kind of just dissipates, right? It just kind of disperses that light. It makes it softer. Okay? That means that you're not getting all the energy back from your ancestors. That energy is kind of scattering around, and some of it will never reach you. And it'll kind of dissolve away, bounce back out to the spiritual realm. It goes in all different directions, except for the direction that we need it to go, right? So by having that clear aura, by having that frequency on the border that is really more accepting of energies, external energies, we're encouraging our spiritual ancestors to communicate, to send us this energy at which to heal. Now, many people wonder why, and I've had them ask me, how is it that I go to bed, feeling just exhausted, and my joints hurt, and everything hurts, and I'm tired, but yet I wake up refreshed and recharged and rejuvenated and ready to tackle another day. And I tell them, I say, well, that's because you've stopped blocking that energy. That energy arrives all day, every day, right? So if during our day, during our normal work day, we take 5 minutes, and we take this 5 minutes and we just sit down, we clear our minds, we get our emotional state in maybe a hopeful state to where that border is nice and even. And now we're going to allow this energy to arrive from our ancestors that can heal us, that can evolve us to whatever our next stage in life is. So by representing Njörðr today, we're really looking at the clarity within the water. And the water, of course, being the aura that surrounds each and every one of us. Now, people have asked me, well, what is an aura? Which is a great question. It's obviously a very important thing to understand is, what is this aura? Well, if you think about it like this, if you have any experience with electrical lines, electrical wires that transmit power, particularly those of higher voltage, say, along your power company, okay? They're sending it down the wire. Each wire creates what we call this kind of power band around it. And we refer to this, in electronic terms, it's referred to as the EMF, or the electromagnetic force. And what it is it's a field generated by the passing of energy, and it creates this field around the wire, or around the generator, whatever is creating this power, and moving power, right? Moving is the key word there. So we're moving energy across the wire. It creates an EMF. The more power, the larger the EMF, right? In much the same way we saw science has revealed to us the EMF created by, say, an atomic detonation. So we saw the same kind of thing where the weapon was detonated, and we have this EMF that kind of shoots out in every direction for a foreseeable space around the site, around the explosion site. And the sun, our sun, of course, the goddess Sol, creates EMFs all the time. I travel from her surface to the surface of Midgard, where it is usually not as powerful by the time it gets from her to us. So, but she's creating them all the time. And so we see them in solar flares, and then ultimately there's some effect of this EMF that arrives here on Midgard. So EMFs are very, well, your aura is your EMF, if you will. So your physical form creates energy, and it moves energy. It moves energy fairly efficiently, okay? It does a great job. When it does that, it creates an EMF, or an electromagnetic force, just like as if you were a power line. It creates an EMF. The more the power, the more energy that we're moving, the larger the EMF. Larger the EMF, of course, the larger the aura, the larger the reach, the larger the intercommunication. But remember, when we're communicating with the spiritual realm, we're not talking about distance. The spiritual realm is part of our makeup, our being. As atomic structure is created, i.e. mass, is created, it's created of a collection of atoms. And these atoms are broken into a multitude of parts that represent very much the physical and the spiritual existence. The physical existence being what we refer to as the nucleus. The nucleus includes intellect and emotion. Those two parts represent the nucleus. And then the electron, of course, floating around, represents the spiritual realm. So they're in the same time and space, right? So you're made up of octillions of atoms, and each of these atoms then produces two parts. Okay, so it's a very important part of our existence is this atomic piece. So just something to think about, right? All right, I've got to take a real quick commercial break. When we come back from commercial break, we'll spend the last couple of minutes talking about how you can use the advantages of Njörðr in your everyday life. We'll be right back.
The air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me. It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
NewRealityTV.com.
Welcome back, and thank you for taking that moment. And thank you so much for those of you who have supported New Reality TV, NewRealityTV.com, a wonderful channel dedicated to our spiritual growth. So check them out. I also want to give a huge shout out to 4/7's decals for your home and auto. Every hall, every wagon, every shield bore our mark of pride. Well, 4/7's carries on this tradition by bringing those decals and those things that help us to decorate our lives and to make our objects more us, and it certainly brings that comfort and maybe that recognition of that pride to the forefront. So check them out. You can check out their link, akumedia.akulfhednar.com. There you can, and actually if you go to norsewhispers.com, you can get there. All right, so norsewhispers.com is a little bit easier to spell, so check them out and you will not be disappointed. So today we're talking about the power of Njörðr and the sea and the power of the sea, but we've also talked about this idea of managing our mind, our interactivity between ourselves and the spiritual realm, and how that works. So there are a couple of things that I want you to take away from today, particularly today on Freya's Day, as we go into a weekend of rejuvenation, of rest, and of kind of recharging the batteries. I want you to think about a couple of things. First thing I want you to think about is your aura. What aura are you producing? So what is in our inside of our aura, i.e., how much mental processing are we thinking about, all the In everyday life, we got a lot going on, right? So we got kids, we got bills, we got mortgages and rent and all that stuff. And that can kind of chew up our mental processing. So sometimes just taking a few minutes for ourselves, just stepping away from all that and being able to kind of clear that part of our mind. The other part, as we mentioned, is that frequency on the outside, and that's controlled by our emotional state. Our emotional state is all about us. How do we feel? When many times we have a tendency to say, oh, that caused me to feel this way, a certain way. And no, it didn't. It triggered something that made you want to do it, but you had a choice. And you can choose whether you decide to succumb to this emotional state or deny it. You can make that choice. And it doesn't matter what it is. We always have a choice. We can make a choice as to whether we feel good or bad, whatever. We have that choice. So understanding our control and our power in this whole interpretation of our life's experiences. We always have a choice. So a very empowering statement as we get through our work week and get ready to kind of reabsorb some of our energy, kind of focus on us a little bit over the weekend. I want us to think about our aura and what it is that we are building, right? Because we, mental state, emotional state, those two things are building that aura. They're establishing a pattern in that aura. And we do that. We're the ones that drive that. So taking accountability and making your aura the way you want it is completely up to you. So think about it as we go into particularly this weekend. Now, that brings up our second point, which was to say, when we have that clear aura and when we have that reduced, nice, even flow of our aura's border, we're opening ourselves up to allowing more healing energy to come in. Right? So we're not blocking it at the border. We're not blocking it or diffusing it in the stuff in there with us, in that inner space inside the aura. So we're not blocking it. We're allowing more of that energy to get to us, and then our spiritual self, we can direct the energy where we need it to be. Healing, evolving, growing, learning, loving, all of these places we can use that energy. All right. So think of those two things this weekend as you go through, and hopefully you will do some meditation. Kind of remember, put yourself right there in the old third eye, focus your energy on you, and you'll begin to kind of build and heal and grow and move past where you may feel as if it's kind of a rut or you're stuck in your life. Focus on you a little bit. Turn that energy back. Stop looking for external things to cure our problems. Remember, we have the power. We have the energy to manipulate and to manage as we see fit for our existence. Okay? So just keep that in mind as you go into this weekend. And hopefully, come Monty's Day, you'll be ready. I do want to give us just a quick nod and say the 18th, for those of you in Anchorage, we are doing a drum circle on the 18th of October. We'll be up at the Abbott Loop Community Park. Please come and join us. Bring your drum, bring your tambourine, bring whatever. Bring yourself. Everything else we can fill in. So be sure to join us there, and you'll be glad you did. Just let that frequency kind of roll through us as we attempt to send that energy out to all of those who really need it. So sending it out to the spiritual realm, sending it out to the physical realm, and hopefully help others to provide some healing. So All right, my friends, I wish you the very best weekend. I am excited. I'm thrilled for you. I hope that everything that you wish for comes to manifest, and that you're able to control that which you have control over, and to deny that which you don't. All right? So enjoy your weekend. We will see you again on Mani's Day. Until then, love and light. Love each other. But most importantly, love yourself.
Watching Fulfillingness Belysning, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Ulfhednar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.